Welcome back to LearnXYZ channel, where we like to take complex topics and make them a little more digestible for you. Today we're diving into something that's probably on everybody's mind right now. India's Union Budget 2025. Specifically, we're going to try to break down this new tax regime and figure out what it could mean for you, for your wallet.
It's fascinating how much attention it's getting.
Yeah.
This new tax regime, I mean, it's not just numbers on a page, right?
Right.
This has the potential to really change things. I mean, not just for individuals, but for the whole economy.
Okay, so let's start with the basics. I mean, this budget covers a lot of ground, right? Everything from infrastructure to green energy initiatives. But we're really zeroing in on this tax regime today. So can you just walk us through what's actually changed here?
Sure. So the core idea is really simplification. The government's reduced the number of tax slabs and actually lowered the rates, especially if you're a higher earner. So say you're earning above 15 lakh.
Okay.
Now you're looking at a 25% tax rate. Sounds pretty good, right?
Yeah. On the surface, yeah, lower taxes. Who doesn't want that? But I have a feeling it can't be that simple.
Well, you're right. There's a trade-off here. To get these lower rates and simpler structure, the government's removed a lot of the deductions that a lot of us have kind of come to rely on. So things like your deductions under Section 80C, HRA, LTA, those are all gone.
So there's the catch. It's not just about the rate itself. It's about what you're losing in the process. So if you're someone who's been very good about maximizing those deductions, now this could be a little bit of a shock to the system.
Yeah, this is where things get really interesting because the impact of this new regime, it's going to depend so much on your own personal finances and how you've been planning.
Okay, let's start with the potential benefits here.
Yeah.
So lower tax rates mean more disposable income, right?
Right.
So what does that actually look like practically?
Well, potentially it means more money to spend or invest, right? Now, from a macro perspective, you've got this increased spending power. That could really stimulate the economy, right? Lead to higher consumption, potentially even create jobs in certain sectors.
So it's not just about your own personal bottom line, right?
Yeah.
There are these ripple effects that go out and potentially touch the whole economy. And this is a good segue, I think, to something we have here. We've got this comparison table that shows the difference between the old regime and the new one for someone earning 10 lakh.
Right.
What really jumps out at you when you look at this?
Well, the first thing I see is, the taxable income under the new regime is higher, right? Because you're losing those deductions. But the interesting part is that the impact on your take-home pay, it's not as drastic as you might think.
It is kind of surprising because you would think losing all those deductions would hit you a lot harder. So does this mean that for someone in this 10 lakh range, the new regime might actually be the better option?
Well, it's possible,
Yeah.
but you can't generalize, right? It's just one example. The impact's going to be very different depending on each person's situation. So someone who wasn't maximizing those deductions before, they might come out ahead, but someone who's really leaning on those deductions to, minimize their taxes, they might see a decrease in their take-home.
So you really have to kind of do a personal calculation. You can't just look at, oh, the rate's lower, so I'm automatically going to be better off.
Right, exactly. You've got to look at the whole picture.
A whole picture.
How much were you saving before with those deductions? What are your financial goals? How comfortable are you with maybe changing your investment strategy? All these things factor in.
Speaking of investment strategies, I think one of the big concerns I've heard is that, by getting rid of these deductions, it might discourage people from saving and investing in those tax-saving instruments.
Yeah, that's a valid point. Because a lot of people, they depend on those deductions as an incentive to invest in things like public provident fund, ELSS schemes, insurance policies. Yeah.
And those instruments, they're not just about saving taxes, right? They're designed for long-term wealth creation.
Exactly.
So the big question is, will people still invest in these if that tax incentive's gone?
That's a huge question. And I think, as an investor, you have to think, well, are the returns I'm getting still attractive even without that tax benefit? And are there other, avenues for investment that might actually make more sense in this new world?
Yeah, you've got to think about all of that. This new regime, it's forcing people to be more proactive about their investments, more informed. It's not just about minimizing your taxes anymore. It's about finding the right investments for your goals.
Right. It's about the bigger picture.
Exactly.
So it seems like this new regime is really pushing people to be more proactive about their own money.
Yeah. It's about being more strategic, more informed. Maybe this will even lead to a more financially literate population, which would be a good thing, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Long term, definitely. Okay. So we've talked about the potential impact on individuals, but what about zooming out a bit? How could this new regime affect the Indian economy as a whole?
That's where it gets really fascinating. One thing that could happen is a shift towards formal employment. A simplified tax structure. It could make it more attractive for businesses to operate formally and for people to actually seek out those formal jobs.
Interesting.
And that could lead to shrinking that informal economy, which would have huge implications for tax revenue and even just economic growth.
Right, because we always hear about the challenges of India's informal economy. Could this be a way to kind of nudge things in the right direction?
It's definitely possible. A larger formal economy means a broader tax base, right? Which gives the government more resources to invest in things like public goods and services.
Right.
And it means better job security and social security benefits for workers. So it goes beyond just, the economic numbers.
Yeah, it affects people's lives. Okay, so it sounds like there's a lot of potential for positive change here. But are there any potential downsides, any risks associated with this new approach?
Well, of course, with any big policy change, there are always risks. One concern is that getting rid of those deductions, it could disproportionately impact certain groups. People who really relied on deductions for things like medical expenses or education loans.
So even though the goal is to simplify the tax system, there could be some unintended consequences for certain people.
Exactly. So it's really important for the government to keep a close eye on how this all plays out and be ready to adjust things if needed. Make sure it's truly beneficial for everyone.
That makes a lot of sense. Now, we talked about the potential for increased spending and economic growth, but isn't there also a risk that this could lead to inflation?
That's a valid concern.
Yeah.
If consumer spending goes up but production doesn't keep pace, that could definitely lead to inflation. So the government has to walk a fine line there, using monetary and fiscal policies to kind of manage that balance.
So it's a whole ecosystem, right? It's not just about the tax regime itself. It's about managing the overall economic environment to make sure things are stable and sustainable.
Yeah, exactly. This new tax regime, it's just one piece of a much bigger puzzle. It has to work in harmony with all those other policies and initiatives.
And we can't forget about those big investments that the budget's allocated to infrastructure, right? Particularly in green energy. How do you see those investments playing into this whole economic picture?
Those investments are crucial. It's like laying the foundation for sustainable growth. Improved infrastructure not only boosts economic activity, but it also just makes life better for people, right?
Right.
And the focus on green energy, it's smart. It aligns with India's commitment to tackling climate change, while also creating new jobs and opportunities in a growing sector.
So it seems like this budget is really trying to address multiple challenges at once, promoting economic growth, improving infrastructure, and tackling climate change.
It's ambitious for sure. It'll be really interesting to see how all these initiatives interact and how they shape India's economic trajectory moving forward.
It's a lot to think about. I think what's important for people to understand is that this new tax regime, it's not just about, okay, am I going to pay more or less?
Right.
It's about understanding how this all fits together, how it affects individual financial planning, how it influences employment trends, and ultimately how it impacts the overall health of the Indian economy.
It's all connected.
Yeah, it's like we've zoomed out from our individual tax forms, and now we're looking at this whole landscape.
Exactly, and that's what makes it so interesting. It's not just a change on paper. This could really transform things.
So before we wrap up, let's try to distill this down into some key takeaways for our listeners. Like, what are the most important things to keep in mind as we all kind of wade into this new tax world?
Well, first of all, don't panic. Those lower rates, they might look really tempting. But you got to analyze your own situation. Really figure out if losing those deductions is actually worth it for you.
So it's a personal calculation, not just like a blanket statement for everyone.
Exactly. And second, think long-term, Don't just focus on how much tax you're paying this year. Think about your financial goals 5-10 years down the line. How might this new regime affect your investments? You might have to adjust your approach to really optimize things.
Right. And third, I think it's important to remember this is just one piece of a much larger puzzle. These changes, they could have ripple effects on everything. Employment, consumer spending, government revenue, even India's, green goals.
Yeah, it's all about connecting the dots between your own finances and the bigger picture. The more you understand those connections, the better decisions you can make. Not just about your money, but about the policies that shape our economy.
This has been such an insightful deep dive. I feel like I have a much clearer understanding of this new tax regime and what it all means.
It's been great talking about this with you. And knowledge is power. The more you know, the better equipped you are to navigate these changes and make choices that really work for you.
And for those of you who want to dive even deeper, we have a ton of resources on our website, LearnXYZ-In. You'll find detailed analyses, comparisons, calculators, even some personalized advice to help you make sense of it all.
Definitely check it out. Arm yourselves with knowledge. That's the best way to thrive in this kind of environment.
Absolutely. A huge thank you to everyone for joining us on this deep dive into India's new tax regime. We hope you found it informative and engaging.
And remember, staying informed is the key. It's the first step to taking control of your finances. We're here to support you every step of the way.
Don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the LearnXYZ channel for more deep dives into all sorts of fascinating topics, and hit that notification bell so you don't miss anything.
And if you prefer listening on the go, we're on Spotify as well. Just search for LearnXYZ channel and stay tuned for more insightful conversations.
Thank you for listening to LearnXYZ channel. We hope you found this deep dive valuable. Please visit our informative website, www.LearnXYZ.in, and don't forget to like this video and subscribe to our channel. We're also on Spotify. Until next time, keep learning, keep exploring, keep those brains buzzing. This is the LearnXYZ channel, signing off.